Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, where I have meaningful conversations with creatives about their mental health journeys. Please note, I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist, but an actor and a filmmaker who is deeply interested in sharing my own struggles and exploring the mental health of others. My hope is that these conversations brings you some joy, some personal understanding, and some tools so that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today is actually going to be a solo episode because there's a lot of things going on in the industry and the world right now that pertains directly to mental health. And I know that I have been feeling a lot of anxiety right now, and the people that I've been talking to have been feeling a lot of anxiety. And so I thought it would be helpful for me to pop on and talk about it because that is what this platform is for. So, as I'm recording this on September 30th, the writer's strike has officially ended, the WGA strike. They do have to vote to ratify the contract, but everyone is assuming that that is going to go through. At the same time, the Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, is going to go back to the negotiation table on October 2nd. What this means is that we could potentially be out of this double strike within the next week. The writers ended up coming to an agreement with the AMPTP or AMPTS, as we like to say, because it's the studios, not the producers that we're striking against. Um, they actually, once they came back into the room and the AMPTS were willing to actually negotiate and have a conversation, they ended up coming to an agreement fairly quickly. So it is completely in the realm of possibility that the actors will also come to an agreement very quickly. Why is that nerve wracking? It's nerve wracking for a lot of different reasons. I think that the strike has given a lot of people purpose. I think that it's given people in a community that they haven't had for a long time. I also think that just like the pandemic, there was this respite from hustle culture where we had this ability to take a break and not stress about what we were doing or weren't doing with our careers because no one could be working. And of course, I want to give full support for anyone who has struggled from the strike. And that includes not just the writers and the actors, but also um, everyone who has been affected by the strike. Bus drivers, catering people, obviously, all of the other incredible people who are behind the scenes and help make TV and film happen. Just, from the DP to the grip, um, to the makeup artist, like everyone that is a part of this community has been affected by the strike. So I would like to first acknowledge the fact that I understand why people are excited to get back to work because we all are excited to make a living again. At the same time, I would like to have an understanding and appreciation for the fact that the end of this strike might be causing some people anxiety. I actually posted a poll on my Instagram in preparation for this episode, and I wanted to share the results that I got because I think that it's really interesting and expresses exactly how split everyone is. And again, I think it's really important to remind ourselves and others that all of these feelings can be true at the same time. There is no one right answer or one right feeling when it comes to all of this. We can all feel all of these feelings and it could change on a, daily, second, minute by minute basis. And that is completely okay. From the people who voted, very interestingly, we actually had a pretty strong split. So out of the people that we polled, 31% said that they are overjoyed to get back to work. 28% said that they were stressed and anxious. 31% said they had mixed feelings. So they're both stressed and anxious as well as overjoyed. And 10% said striking gave them purpose and it's it's a loss to, get back to work and to lose that strike. I think that this is a really interesting split. And just for me personally, as I'm looking at the results of the people who voted, like actually looking at the people who voted and the people who I know, a lot of the people who voted to let's get back to work are non-actors and non-writers. So they are people who are other below the line staff who, just get hired, not just get hired, but they get hired onto a show. And so they are part of this huge cog that helps make things happen. And then as far as the stressed and anxious, as well as the mixed feelings, both of those groups are primarily actors and writers. And I think that, there's a really valid reason for that. And that's what I want to talk about today is the fact that it's just like the pandemic where we had this period of relax. And it certainly caused anxiety and stress and trauma in a lot of different ways. But it also allowed people to take a step back from that hustle culture and remind themselves of what was important. And so I think that being thrust back into work immediately, as we are right now, is causing a lot of people stress and anxiety. So I think that's makes all of the sense in the world. And I wanted to highlight a couple different things that people have brought up because I think I asked for some further clarification and some further thoughts from people who are having some stressed, anxious feelings. And I want to share them with you today because I think that giving voice to this anxiety and allowing you, the listener, to hear how other people are feeling and how other people's anxiety is coming into play might help you feel a little bit better and a little bit less alone. I know, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, that as soon as the WGA contract was finalized, I immediately started feeling stressed. And of course, I am so happy that the strike is over and we can get back to work. And there are so many, wonderful things that are a part of that. But I also think that there is, a bunch of the people in this career who, haven't quite reached the level where we are immediately going to get back to work. And I think that there's this idea of being left behind. And there is this idea that with the strike going on, we didn't necessarily have to focus on where we are in our careers and where we want to be because it was just like everyone right now. It was kind of um, a universal resetting in a way where it was like everyone was back to zero and we were all, really like quote unquote in this together. And then now, as the strike ends, we clearly have the people who are going to immediately get back to work and the people who are still trying to work on their careers so that we can get back to work in this way. And so I want to again recognize both sides of those things and recognize whatever side of the aisle that you are on, your feelings are valid and it's perfectly okay however you're feeling. So again, I'm going to share a couple quick comments from people that I think will potentially be helpful for you. Number one, I had a really interesting conversation with a wonderful friend of mine where she was talking about how it was really upsetting for her to hear the public opinion of actors and writers. She explained the fact that, we dedicate our lives to entertaining others. And while a lot of actors are known for potentially getting into this for selfish reasons or, whatever, I think at the core, most actors and writers who have stuck it out for as long as we have are in this because we are storytellers, because we want to tell stories. We want to affect others. We want to give back to the community in some way. And so it's really upsetting when we learn that people don't respect our profession and yet they still consume what we are making. And so it's this, difficult conundrum where it's like we are creating something that they are constantly it is a constant part of their lives, and yet they don't respect the people who are making it. And of course, that is exactly the way that we felt in negotiations with the AMPTP. But I think that, as she pointed out, just the general public's opinion as well was really upsetting. One caveat and one thing I think we have to remember is the fact that the media is controlled by these companies. So any external media coverage that we were getting that was like poo-pooing on actors and writers are potentially skewed and was potentially a PR media tactic. But I think she brings up a really good point in the fact that people that I talked to didn't quite understand what this strike was about. And so I know that this has put her in a bit of a conundrum as far as, her career and what she wants. And so I think that everything that I'm going to say, all of my quote unquote suggestions and thoughts today are going to come back to this idea that if we are storytellers and if this is how you want to spend your time, like if we have one life and this is how you want to spend your time is creating and collaborating with others, then that is the only actual return on our investment is hopefully the joy that we are getting out of the creating. As a final mention with that, I think it's really important to remember the fact that we do live in a bubble of other actors and creatives, especially in LA. So it's upsetting to learn about other people's opinions. I also think that it is sobering and important for us to be aware of other people's opinions. I think that it can make us aware of culture in general, and whether it's upsetting or not, I think that sometimes that is beneficial for us to learn about. Another thing that multiple people commented about was this return to hustle culture and this concern that we are going to jump back into that pull of hustle culture. I know that that's something that I have felt immediately upon the strike ending. I was like, oh gosh, I'm not doing enough. What can I do now in order to further my career? And I had a really amazing conversation with someone last week that I think addresses this and I think will be very helpful. I was talking to this woman who is a career coach. I actually interviewed her on the podcast. Laverne McKinnon. She is the one who is a grief doula, and she's also a career coach, specifically works with creatives. And I was talking with her about my career and my concerns and, just planning and all of this kind of stuff. And she reminded me to take a step back and to, instead of looking at my career as a 1 year plan and like, what am I going to accomplish this year? She reminded me to look at it as a 5 year plan. And that was so helpful for me to think about where I was 5 years ago and even with the pandemic, and then where I would like to be in 5 years. And that really allowed me to take a breath and remind myself that even if I don't accomplish what I want to accomplish in the next year, I still am going to make minute, uh, progressive steps towards where I want to be in 5 years. And so I think that as we start to feel that pull of hustle culture, I would just remind yourselves, and I'm reminding myself as well listening, that it doesn't matter necessarily what you do by January 1st, 2024. I think it's important for us to constantly try and push ourselves forward or do something creative or, learn a new hobby, like wherever you are in your creative space. I think that it is important to focus on that or to have that be a part of your daily life. But take a step back and remind yourself that you have, look at your 5 year plan instead of your 1 year plan. I also want to give a special shout out to Sam Valentine of the One Broke Actress because I was on a session with her and she was reminding people to look at their goals in segments. So look at your financial goals, look at your relationship goals, look at your health goals, look at your career goals. And she reminds people that like once a quarter, you should choose one of those goals to focus on, not all of them, and not one goal in each category, but one category. So choose a category that you want to focus on, and that should be your goal. So I think that it's a very similar idea with, what I was just saying about the 5 year plan, where it's like, we also are human beings. And if hustle culture does not serve you, then, and again, I'm reminding myself of this as well, take a step back and look at your life and look at the things that are working for you and the things that aren't working for you. Look at what was really beneficial for you in the past, um, you know, 4 or 5 months of the strike. Like, what have you put into place? What habits have you put into place over the past 5 months that have served you? And it would be great if you could continue those habits in some way, whether that is walking with your friends, a couple times a week. We can do that without striking. I think that it's important to just remember that this hustle culture is number one, you know, rapidly spreading disease. I'm going to call it a disease, but it's really mostly in industries where we feel like we are the only ones who are going to get a chance. And you've got to like crawl on people in order to succeed and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that it is a thought process that is, number one, doesn't serve us, and number two, is created by others in order to fuel the kind of division that the AMPTP thought was going to break the WGA and SAG-AFTRA. The AMPTP thought that these individual members of these unions were going to turn on each other in order to succeed, in order to get what they wanted. And I think that the fact that we have held strong and that we have reached deals that are going to be so beneficial for not just, our careers, but careers for future writers and actors is an illustration of the fact that we have each other's back. And so I think that it's really important for us to remember that, and remember that even though there is this hustle culture mentality and this crawling on top of each other, that in the time of need, in the time of the strike, we did have each other's backs. And there's something really comforting in that. Finally, I have, two different people who mentioned the idea of feeling like you didn't get enough done during the strike. And this is 100% my biggest fear. We have one person who said that they are anxious that they won't have a chance in this industry, even when the strikes are done, or that they didn't do enough prep in order to get back into the industry. I think that makes so much sense, because we have this feeling that we had this like respite where we could like focus on our craft and focus on our marketing and focus on our actor business and all of this stuff. That way, when the strikes are over, we can like hit the ground running and break out. And believe me, number one, I'm talking to myself again, because I certainly have had those same anxious fears. But I think that, again, that's a fallacy. I think that it is again going back to this idea that there is only one person for the job, or whatever we're doing is not going to be enough because someone else is going to get the one spot. And I also think it's going back to this idea of needing to succeed right now. Like, now that the strike is over, I need to succeed right now. And that is, number one, not a productive mindset. And again, speaking to myself, but it's also not true. And I think that it's so important to remind ourselves of that. And again, to go back to that 5-year plan of like, I don't need to succeed in the next month. I just need to focus on continuing to grow and to achieve my goals in the future. And the final comment that I had, and I've lumped some of these together, but is the deadline to finish scripts and feeling like we didn't use the time wisely. And this as well, I feel this so much because I know that I have multiple scripts that I'm writing. I feel like I didn't use this time to the best of my abilities. But then I take a step back and I remind myself that what I did over this strike since May, because I've been, very active on the line with the WGA as well. The things that I did during that time are equally as important as finishing a script. I collaborated with people, on the strike lines. I made some new, wonderful friends. I also felt my own moral center becoming stronger by standing up for my fellow workers. I am helping raise 2 children with my partner. That takes up a lot of time. I was able to travel a lot this summer because I didn't feel the pull of being in LA 100%. And I did make a lot of progress on 3 different scripts that I'm working on, and that's amazing. And so I think that, again, it's coming back to this idea that we put our own deadlines upon ourselves, and sometimes I think that those deadlines are just not helpful. I would like to say that, like, deadlines, personally are helpful when I'm writing or when I'm working on something. Like, I'm very task oriented and I like making to-do lists and checking off the to-do list and all that kind of stuff. But I think that it's important to have that be focused on our own timelines and not on the timelines of others, because I think the thing that is the most stressful about the strike ending is that it's not in our timeline. It is out of our control. And so if we had 2 or 3 scripts, or if I had 2, 3 scripts that I'm like, I'm going to finish these by the end of the strike, but now the strike ended in 3 days, how can I possibly finish 3 scripts in 3 days? And so it's about running our lives on someone else's timeline, and that's not helpful. We just have to, again, focus on our own timeline and what is going to help us personally succeed. Number 1, I think that it would be really helpful for everyone, if you are feeling anxious, to make a in control, out of control list. This is something that I've mentioned on previous episodes, and it's something that I find is so helpful. When I write down a list of things, if I have a problem or an issue that I'm working through, I write down a list of things that are in my control in related to that issue or anxiety or whatever. And then I write down a list of things that are out of my control. And then I only look at the in control list, because those are the things that you can actually focus on. So, for example, something like I didn't finish enough scripts in time and I feel like I've got this pressure of whatever. Out of control is the strike ending and the fact that we have no timeline on that. And I mean, to be honest, the actors' strike could continue on for a very long time. We don't actually know. We're just speculating that it should potentially be over soon. In control is continuing to focus on my own stuff and continuing to write and continuing to build my own deadlines that are not based on anyone else's deadlines. That's something that I have control of. I would also like to remind everyone that there is such value in being the kind of person that other people want to work with. So, by showing up on the strike lines, by being a part of this super important workers' union and labor movement, we all are showing up for each other in a really important way. And that is the kind of person that people want to work with. People want to work with people who are kind, who are helpful, who are respectful of others, and who have a community first mindset, because filmmaking and making television is really hard. And so if we don't have a focused mindset and aren't focusing on the community, then what are we doing this for, And so I think that it's super important for us to take a step back and just focus on the person that you are, the wonderful person that you are, and remind yourself that that is something you can control, is being the kind of person that other people want to work with. And again, I would like to remind you to look at a 5-year plan instead of looking at like what you said you were going to accomplish during this strike or what you said you're going to accomplish by January 1st of 2024. There are so many potential things that might happen. Potential IATSE strike next year. Like, there's so many things that could potentially happen. And I think that that has been proven to us multiple times, both with the pandemic and now with the strike. And it's really important for us to focus on future goals, because then they are going to be more manageable, more tangible, and something that we can actually put some timeline on that really makes sense. I would like to also remind everyone listening that the workers, the actors, and the writers, and everyone who has been a part of the strike, we are not alone. As illustrated by the auto workers strike that is happening right now, there is a huge labor movement right now, which is so incredibly important. And I think that we need to remind ourselves to be proud of what we have just accomplished and what we have just been through. It's also important to hold space for whatever trauma and whatever anxiety you are feeling because of these past couple months. Again, both of those things can be true. You can be proud of what we have accomplished and what we have fought for, and also feel anxiety about what comes next. And a reminder that that is a universal feeling. It's not just in the minds of the labor, workers, both in our industry as well as in the auto industry and other industries that are striking. That is just the feeling that a lot of the world is happening right now, is that with all of these, upsets and all of these, different huge global changes that are happening, we all have some feelings of stress about what comes next. And it's really important to remind ourselves to be present, to touch base with our community, and to remind ourselves that that is really all we have control of, is ourselves and how we show up and how we show up for other members of our community. I want to thank you so much for listening today. I really love where this community is continuing to grow and what these interviews are bringing to light this season. So if you haven't listened to any of the other episodes, I strongly encourage you to go check out the other episodes that have already landed this season, as well as all of the ones that are going to be coming next. I would also like to give a special shout out to my dear friend and editor of this podcast, Keitra Parkman. I couldn't do it without you. I would like to remind you that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for listening. Be kind to yourself, and I'll see you next week.